welcome, I'm Chapter Master Raziel, and this week, and it is going to be throughout the week, I'm going to be looking at the Codex Witch Hunters and the lore inside it. And this is Imperium. I like the idea of them, and I like, the more I look into them, that, well, there's lore videos that kind of make the Inquisition these extreme psychopaths. They're kind of not. They are more of a police force. And you can see this in several novels, and this is how they work. They're not just going to kill someone for looking at chaos. A good example is in Ordo's Xenos, the Eisenhower book. No, Magos, the Eisenhower book, where he allows someone to live even though he had a contact with chaos, which I think is really interesting. So, I'm going to look through it this week, which is going to go through the history of the Ordo Hereticus and Sisters of Battle, and of course at the end of every part I'm going to go through my thoughts and what I think, and maybe, put my opinion on what I've seen on other videos, which I think may be incorrect. Because the reason I do these videos is I want when people see the lore, I want it to they have more of an accurate rather than just an opinion or some hyperbole to go on. Anyway, let's begin. The Ecclesiarchy and the Ordo Hereticus. The Ecclesiarchy has provided guidance to the servants of the Emperor for nearly 10,000 years, through some of the darkest times imaginable, such as the Emperor's preternatural charisma and the strength that many worshipped him as a god even before his near death at the hands of a traitorous war master, Horus. The war master's treachery had almost destroyed the Imperium, which was left teetering on the brink of anarchy. In these bleak times, spiritual guidance was needed as never before, and as news of the Emperor's supreme sacrifice spread, adoration and worship swept through the Imperium. Visionaries appeared on many worlds, preaching that the Emperor still watched over faithful and divinely inspired individuals. Quickly attracted hordes of disciples. Soon, these cults were spreading through the galaxy, the strongest growing and prospering, subsuming or eradicating smaller ones, until one particular sect of Emperor worshippers grew to dominate them all, the Temple of the Saviour Emperor. The Temple of the Saviour Emperor. Billions upon billions revered the Emperor until by the start of the 32nd millennium, almost 2/3 of the Imperium was united by his worship. Only the warriors of the Adeptus Astartes and Adepts of Cult Mechanicus were exempt from the cult's tenets, having their own beliefs, traditions, and forms of worship. Less than a century later, the Temple of the Saviour Emperor was officially recognized as the official religion of the Imperium, and given the title of Adeptus Ministorum, or Ecclesiarchy. The power of the Ecclesiarchy continued to grow to such a level that its seat in the Council of the High Lords of Terror was made permanent. With the backing of the Adeptus Terror, the Ministorum continued to extend its influence throughout the Imperium, casting out as unbelievers who did not join its ranks. Unchallenged in matters spiritual, the Ministorum took steps to ensure that its control would spread to all facets of Imperial life, even to the extent that the High Lords of Terror would take their lead from the head of the Ministorum. The Ecclesiarch, believing him to be the voice of the Emperor, a belief the Ministorum did nothing to disprove. Soon the Ministorum was the de facto master of the Imperium, dictating imperial law, mastering armies, and deciding which threats to meet with force. But as the grip of the Ministorum tightened, the secular power of the administratum fought against this absolute control, and thus began a power struggle that lasted until the 41st millennium. Into the maelstrom of conflict stepped Gog Vandire, 361st High Lord of the Administratum. The Age of Apostasy. In the beginning of M36, Vandire broke the stranglehold of the Ecclesiarchy in several bold moves, overtly manipulating the Ministorum through assassination and brute force. He took control of the Ministorum in what could only be described as a military coup, and assumed the dual role of Ecclesiarch and High Lord of the Administratum, driving the Imperium into the bloodiest period since the Horus Heresy. The Age of Apostasy and the Reign of Blood. Vandire was a paranoid megalomaniac, and saw plots and treachery everywhere. His mind a twisted labyrinth of suspicion and delusions. Countless millions died in the Reign of Blood, and entire worlds were destroyed by his madness. Early in his blood-soaked reign, Vandire discovered an all-female order of warriors on the world of San Leor, known as the Daughters of the Emperor, which he renamed the Brides of the Emperor, and these became his personal bodyguards. The reign of blood was to continue for another 7 decades, with millions more burning in the fires of Vandir's insanity. As years dragged on, the Vandir grew increasingly violent and his mood swings even more unpredictable. He developed a morbid fear of light and would often wander the darkened passages of the imperial palace, lapsing into delirious ramblings and utterances. It was to this dark, forbidding place that a lone messenger delivered the news that was to herald the end of a reign of blood. On the world of Dimmamar, Dimmamar, God, that's a Scrabble win if I ever saw one. A sect known as the Confederation Light had emerged and denounced Vandir as a traitor. Led by a man known as Sebastian IV, the Confederation of Light spread its message to a brutalized people, only too ready to throw off the yoke of oppression, and soon system after system joined Sebastian IV. A massive war fleet consisting of a majority of the Ministerium's armed forces was assembled to crush the rebellious systems, but shortly after its departure it was destroyed by a terrifyingly powerful warp storm in an area of space still known and feared as the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath. With much of the Ministerium's forces destroyed, whole swaths of the Imperium erupted into rebellion. God, tongue twisters. With scores of systems declaring for and Confederation Light, an orator of supreme skill and against Vandir, Sebastian IV swayed millions to his cause and turned the tide against Vandir. As Four's crusade smashed aside those who remained loyal to the Ecclesiarch, the Space Marines and the Adeptus Mechanicus, who had remained largely on the defensive during the Age of Apostasy, were finally able to join forces with Four and close on terror. Once more, the Imperial Palace came under attack, though, this time, from forces loyal to the Emperor. For months, the walls of the palace withstood every assault, until at last, the Adeptus Custodes, the Praetorian Guard of the Emperor himself, sought out Alicia Dominica, the leader of the Brides of the Emperor, and her most trusted companions. The Custodes took them before the Emperor. Through what occurred, there remains unknown. When they emerged from the bowels of the palace, they renounced the names of the brides in favour of their original title, the Daughters of the Emperor, and marched with barely controlled fury to Vandir's audience chamber. They found him in the midst of yet another bloody tirade, pausing only to condemn him for his crimes against the Emperor. Alicia Dominica cut the head from a traitor's shoulders. The reign of blood was over. You have committed the ultimate heresy. Not only have you turned your back on the Emperor and stepped from his light, you have profaned his name and almost destroyed everything he has striven to build. You have perverted and twisted the path he has laid for mankind to tread. As your own decree has stated, there can be no mercy for such a crime, no pity for such a criminal. I renounce your lordship. You walk in darkness and cannot be allowed to live. Your sentence has been long overdue, and it is now time for you to die. Alicia Dominica to High Lord Gog Vandir. The Reformation. Sebastian IV eventually ascended to become Ecclesiarch, and the Ministerium was changed forever. He formed the Synod Ministra on Ophelia VII, an act designed to break up the power of the Ecclesiarchy. But no longer would one man have total power over Ministerium, and became another Vandir. Great changes were gradually implemented to bring Ministerium back to its original inception, and most importantly, the decree passive was issued in 288 M36. This historic act forbade the Ministerium from raising men under arms, and disbanded the armies and fleets that had served Vandir, incorporating the Daughters of the Emperor into military hierarchy, and renaming them the Orders Militant of the Adeptus Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. Though they sat uncomfortably with the newly reinstated High Lords of Terror, they could not oppose Four, and his insistence. I swear there's so many tongue twisters in this one. That they will regulate the Ecclesiarchy as much as enforce its will. Reassured by many of his doubters, perhaps the most important body to come to existence following the Age of Apostasy was not at Four's instigation at all, but at the behest of the secret masters of the Holy Emperor's Holy Orders of the Inquisition. This new organization was the Ordo Hereticus. Rise of the Witch Hunters. The Ordo Hereticus, from the ashes of the Age of Apostasy, formed to guard against the enemy within. While the Inquisition monitors every aspect of the Imperium as a whole, the prime concern of the Ordo Hereticus, or the Witch Hunters, as its members were more commonly known, is the apprehension and judgment of the rogue Saiga, the heretic, and the mutant. Given that the stated purpose of the Adeptus Sororitas and the newly formed Ordo Hereticus mesh so seamlessly, it did not take long for their duties and hierarchy of both organizations to become part of the same holy purpose. Though the Adeptus Sororitas would forever remain the Ecclesiarchy's primary armed force, they would also become the chamber militant of the Ordo Hereticus, a shadowy branch of the organization already swathed in secrecy. The Ordo Hereticus, I have said that so many times in the last 2 minutes, is the guardian of humanity, the watcher at the gate, which protects mankind as much from its own weaknesses as a threat from without. The witch hunters of the Ordo Hereticus are sinister, bearded individuals, pale from long days spent in the excruciating chambers of Inquisition fortresses, or weeks spent poring over ancient texts that speak of heretics and its machinations. The arrival of the Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor is met with as much trepidation as awe, since none know where the gimlet gaze may land, upon whom their suspicions might fall. In addition to monitoring the Ecclesiarchy, ensuring that wars of faith do not exceed their mandate, or that its many cardinals do not amass more power than is deemed appropriate, the Ordo Hereticus keeps a close eye on many other imperial organizations, the Adeptus Abites, Spacemen, also fellow members of the Inquisition. They monitor doctrinal and physical purity, and no one is beyond their jurisdiction. It is a brave man who crosses the path of a witch hunter. As simply opposing a member of Ordo Hereticus, and an individual may be damned and declared heretic and extremis diabolus. Now, apart from my several... God, this is... too many long words. Anyway, I like this is actually quite interesting. I like that it kind of shows how many Space Marines maybe in the Millennium, maybe in Imperium, I should say, because near the start it said 2/3 of Imperium was united by his worship, and it was only the warriors of Adeptus Astartes and Adepts of Cult Mechanics were exempt from the cult's tenets. Now, that is actually I mean, if we take that as said, that's like there's a lot of Space Marines and Mechanicus out there, but I would say the numbers are a lot smaller. But yeah, I do enjoy seeing things like that in books like this, because it's another reason why I like reading the Codexes over novels, is because they are more of a source book and it has more of a textbook feel to reading it, and it's something I do enjoy. And of course we had Gog Vandar, which again, we have the quote from Alicia Dominica about when she kills him, but we don't have, and I've not seen it in any lore at the moment. I mean, there is a lot of lore, so I will still have to look, and I might find it. About his so-called rebuttal is, I do not have time to die, I'm too busy. But we do actually have the quote from her, which is, like I said, it's quite an interesting quote. It's like, she basically says, yeah, we've had enough of your rubbish, and it's time for you to die. You kind of went batshit, and we should have realised it. And I like the fact that Gog Vandar, though rarely mentioned, it does really show his power over the Imperium at the time, because the whole galaxy erupted. As soon as his forces were destroyed by the Warp Storm, the whole galaxy erupted into rebellion. He had such a stranglehold on the Imperium that everyone went, yeah, we've had enough. And that is a massive thing to see. Yeah, the Imperium is big, but usually if it's just one leader, it kind of doesn't really get much. But for him to put the galaxy into such turmoil that everyone just starts fighting back, I just like that idea of open rebellion against tyrannical leaders as well. And it also shows that maybe the Imperium is not as tyrannical as what people think, because yeah, it's like we're oppressed, now we're too oppressed, and we just want to go back to our previous oppression. But there may be more freedom in the Imperium that we know of. This is just speculation, and I will be looking into it more with future videos. But yeah, I quite like that. And then, of course, is the Adeptus Sororitas and Roth Sister Battle in the Ordo Hereticus, not just being about killing heretics, but they're also there to monitor the Ecclesiarchy itself. So I had to tickly throat. And that no one, this is like the final, this was, Gog Vandar was the final straw, and that no one now is above the Inquisition. That even cardinals would be able to, would have someone to answer to should they step out of line too much. It's something like I said, I really enjoy. This is something, and that they are being policed. Anyway, tomorrow we're going to be looking at some of the history of the Ordo's Adeptus Hereticus. And what do you think? What do you think of this little bit about the Ordo Hereticus and how it started? Please leave a comment, like, and all the, all the other stuff, ring the bell. As always, the links to Element Games is below, as with my comment. And I hope everyone has a great day.